Paul James Nolan.
That's me. Don't wear it out.
Yeah, I will. So I think this is going to be a really fun interview for a multitude of reasons.
Okay.
We're going to talk about a lot of different topics, which I'm really excited about. But I want to introduce you.
Okay.
And feel free to fill in the blanks because, like I said, I'm still new to this industry and I'm still learning, and I can only do so much research that's on Google, ChatGPT, Resident Advisor, Beatport, right? There are certain things that are out there that I can find and dig, and there's also things I know about you because we've been working together on marketing, content creation, so like we've had our conversations there. But I want to make sure I get this right. Producer, DJ, mentor. Also, you do, I'll call it like inner work with maps, mental health, right? You're in a lot of different areas within electronic music and outside of electronic music. So you've worked with, I mean, you've been doing this for 30 plus years.
Don't put that many years on me. It's more like 25.
Okay. All right. So quarter of a century.
Thank you. That helped.
Yeah.
Really.
But you've worked with the likes of Sasha, Junkie XL, Cassius, Kevin Saunderson, Paco Osana. I mean, like, the list just goes on and on and on. So I want to ask the question and kind of put this on you because you've been doing this for so long. Who is Paul James Nolan?
I thought the question was going to be, what the fuck are you doing?
Bro, yeah, exactly. Like, what the fuck is going on?
Exactly.
Here?
Like, it's a fucking shit show. Do you know what I mean? And as we say in this part of the world, the quilombo.
Yeah, we're in Argentina, by the way.
Yeah.
So super cool, super fun that I get to travel and do these interviews. But like, yeah, who is Paul James Nolan?
I ask myself that question every day when I look in the mirror, to be honest. I'm kind of just someone who's following his nose and someone who can't help but be permanently curious about things. And you've only really scratched a small portion of like what I've done. That's the stuff that's related to electronic music you've talked about, you know, the fact that I mentor, I do a lot of teaching. I've been teaching now for something like 18 years, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a long time. I've worked in the industry, you know, worked for Cream back in the day. That was really my first break as like a production manager, artist liaison, tour manager, that kind of thing. Audio engineering, consultancy work for D&B Audio. Done a lot of work within the industry in previous years with the likes of the Association for Electronic Music. I was on their mental health steering group for a while. And also, as you mentioned before, done some ambassadorial work, played a few DJ gigs for MAPS, who, if people don't know who MAPS are, they're the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, which is a cause very, very close to my heart. Due to the inner work that you mentioned before. And then it extends. I'm also a fully qualified sound therapist, and I also have a qualification to teach yin yoga as well. So I'm just somebody who has this incredibly, how can I put it, like this irresistible urge. The only thing I know how to do is follow what I'm interested in. And that leads me to all these different places. The interesting thing for me has been in recent years that all those seemingly quite separate, quite disparate interests that I have all started to kind of come together and started to intertwine into something that is a lot more meaningful.
I find that super interesting, and we'll kind of let this conversation go in different ways, but right, sound therapist, audio research with D&B Audio, right? Working with all these different producers, you're a producer yourself, like there are a lot of overlaps in time here. And then taking those learnings and then mentorship. So like there's a ton of different like overlaps and segmentation that are happening throughout your career. But what I want to talk about is like there are so many different parts, but there are three main parts that I've kind of seen, which is like you as a DJ and a producer, you as a mentor, and we'll talk about what that looks like, and then your work in the other parts, right? We'll talk about maps, And then also want to talk about like the audio engineering, the sound therapy, because I find for Medtronica with a focus on mental health, that's super interesting to me. But I know somebody that's been doing this for 25 years and with the people and the likes that you've worked with, there are so many different areas to cover. So I want to talk about your work as a producer, because to be honest with you, like I didn't know who you were before I met you. And then you started telling me like, yeah, I work with this person. I'm like, why? I'm still new. So it's like, okay,
Yeah.
I for sure am scratching the surface in some of these areas, but like, I didn't know who you were. And then you're like, oh yeah, I've seen Delete. And I was like, what? Like crazy. And you're like, oh yeah, Junkie XL. I'm like, this is nuts. So I want to talk about you as a producer and how you've had your hands in so many different projects throughout the years. Like, what's that been like?
Yeah, it's been really interesting and completely unexpected. I mean, everybody's path is different, right? And it's never a straight line. One thing that, relating to the other question, which is who is Paul James Nolan, the extension to that is one thing you'll learn about me is that I do absolutely everything in my life completely fucking ass backwards. So, that tried and true trajectory of you go out, you go into the industry, you have your career, then you go to a university at the end once you've done everything and you teach.
Okay.
No, I started as a teacher. So essentially, the month that I graduated from audio engineering school in 2008, I became a lecturer.
Wow. So where'd you go to audio engineering school?
So I went to SAE in Liverpool, the School of Audio Engineering, which is like a big global chain of these schools. And literally the month after I qualified and did my audio engineering diploma, I was placed in charge of the electronic music production course.
Wow.
Because I came to that course already as someone who was really well known, as a DJ, relatively well known. Been featured in Mixmag, was mentioned in 2004 as a future entrant into the DJ Mag Top 100, back when that meant something, back before it became a popularity contest. And I went to audio school in order to learn how to make better electronic music, because it was something that was missing from my repertoire, because I'd been DJing for a number of years, and we moved from that era of only being a DJ being enough and being booked on your skills and your talent to, no, you've got to be making records as well. So I went into it with those intentions. The audio engineering diploma completely opened me up. I was also interested in film music at that time, which is another aspect of what we haven't mentioned yet, that I've done some stuff for movies and in Hollywood and in LA as well. And that, again, that aspect really sort of opened me up to different aspects of sound itself. We went really deep into the theory and the physics and the psychoacoustics, and on the sound therapy side of things, because you get to understand the human ear, the biology, the psychology, the binaural fusion between your two ears and the brain, and how you interpret sound. That became another fascination as well. But like I say, I ended up becoming the head instructor of SAE in Liverpool. So I went from teaching there a couple of nights a week through to being essentially like the lead lecturer in audio, teaching the same program that I'd been qualified in, and then, making modifications and enhancements. And, it was a really interesting time in my life. Then I kind of reversed into the industry as I started to put more of my music out, as I started to gain a reputation as an engineer. Then that's when my previous connections from working at Cream, working in the industry came to the fore. And then that's how I ended up working with the likes of Sasha and people like Junkie XL, who you've mentioned. That story's a really funny one. That's a testament as much as my production skills as it is to me being a really stubborn, really like bloody-minded networker. So I actually met him at Hans Zimmer's place, because I had a friend who was working with him at the time, and he invited me to see the studio. And Junkie was there, Tom Holkenborg. And yeah, we figured out that we had a mutual friend in Sasha, even back then in like 2013. And then Junkie listened to a lot of my music, and I ended up like writing some stuff for him. So it's a combination of, fascination, everything I said before, following my nose, but also just pointing myself in the general direction of like where interesting stuff is. And then that's how all of that stuff generates. And then once I worked with Junkie. Junkie's told Sasha that I'm really, really good. Okay, well, actually, I've known Sasha for a few years now because we did mentor work together in Ibiza. And it was a natural fit for me to go and work with him on the See and Delete album. And it just sort of compounds from there. And you become a bit of a face at various like events. Like, say, for example, I would go to the International Music Summit, IMS, in Ibiza every year, because everybody you could ever wish to meet was there and all in one room. Essentially, the 400 or 500 people who ran electronic music globally were all in the same room at the same time at that time period. Wow. As that conference got off the ground. So you were taken very seriously by the fact that you were there. And I can credit that event for being utterly transformative to my career, because not only did I get to meet people properly like Sasha, I got to spend quality time getting to know them as well. And then that helped my career to blossom, as well as the likes of the Amsterdam Dance event, everything else. So it's been like a real combination of different things about how all of that kind of came to be. Again, it's just about connecting the dots, doing good work that you find interesting, and, as I say, just following your intuition and following your gut about what is going to constitute something that you're going to find creatively satisfying.
It sounds like becoming an audio engineer, like you said, you reversed into it, but like really started to open a lot more doors for you. Did you have any previous experience in production prior to that?
Not really. I mean, I did have a little bit of experience.
Okay, because when like I'm listening to this story and I'm like, wow, you took to audio engineering and production like obviously very quickly, because you went from I'm going to take this course to now I'm teaching this course. Yeah. So was there like in that process of going through the course, were you like, oh, this just comes easy to me? Like, was there any moment like that?
Yeah, I think it follows what an amazing book by a guy called Robert Greene called Mastery. You might have heard of Robert Greene. He wrote books like, the 48 Laws of Power.
Yeah, I've read that one.
Yeah, so Mastery is, for me, his greatest work, because it literally teaches you how to find what your life's work is meant to be. Almost equally importantly, it teaches you to avoid what he calls the false path, which is the stuff that looks like a great idea, but then actually kind of takes you like away from what the point of it is. And I heard an amazing thing Quentin Tarantino said recently on a Joe Rogan podcast, where he was talking about how he was working in a video store in LA, in California. And he, or whatever it was that he was living, and he said that was what he called dream adjacent.
Got it, because you're working in the industry, but you're right next to your dream of what could be.
Yeah, basically, yeah. But it's just enough to keep you there, to make it feel like you're pursuing the dream, and you're actually not. So you have to be very careful about that. But going back to the Robert Greene book and avoiding that false path, it really does take you through like, okay, this is the apprenticeship. This is what you've got to do. This is how you become a master of your craft. And one of the things that he says in the book is the thing that you're meant to do will feel like it comes incredibly naturally to you, and you'll take to it very easily. And honestly, that was my experience at audio engineering school, that a lot of it just made sense right out of the gate. And the things that didn't make sense, I was incredibly dogged. I was such a pain in the ass to the lecturers. I was that one guy who's just always got his hand up, just asking all the time, what about this? What about this? What about this? And rightly or wrongly, I think more rightly, I had, because I was paying for this course. I'd already been to university and got a degree. I was paying for this course out of my own pocket every month. I was working a 9-to-5 office job and in the studio every night for like 2 years, like doing this diploma part-time, which is like the equivalent of like, half a degree, So I had this perspective of like, well, I'm a paying customer. I'm going to get as much out of that. And it's not cheap. I'm going to get as much out of this as humanly possible. And I actually used to do, believe it or not, a cost per hour Like, so over the course, like I've done so many studio hours, I've done so many lecture hours, the course cost this much. And one of my aims on the course was to try and get the hourly rate as low as possible, which meant I'd extracted as much value as possible. So it was just a case of me being incredibly just bloody minded. And also as well, I did have a natural inclination because I'd had years of DJing. I understood a sense of how music should be programmed, how it should be arranged, how, you know, it should be for my taste. I just never had the language. So previously I did have like, you know, quite a big stab at production. But back then, like, I mean, I went to audio school in 2006. Like, you know, YouTube hadn't really been invented in its...
not really.
You know, in its more recent form. It was mostly just cat videos.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like you know, YouTube was invented in 2006 and then all of a sudden there's like, you know, 50 bros putting dubstep tutorials up because you couldn't even like record a screen that well back then, you know? So it was like all very, very
Everything
early.
was in like 320p.
Oh yeah, exactly. So, you know, you were getting hints and tips from the likes of Computer Music Magazine, Future Music, Sound on Sound if you were a real nerd. And you were relying on people to show you. And as is the way with human nature, a lot of people didn't want to share their secrets back then because it was kind of like being in the magic circle.
Got it.
It was like, no, we can't show you that particular secret. Like, you know.
Also because back then, like information wasn't so readily available.
Exactly.
Right? Like now, you know, you teach yourself pretty much anything online.
Yeah.
To an extent.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You can't do surgery because you gotta actually go practice. Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But that makes sense, right? You're not in the know. You have to like go to Ibiza or wherever to get these types of like schoolings. But now it's kind of like a superpower. Like everyone's sharing their secrets because it is better for their audience or for them to grow.
Yeah, exactly. It went from almost nobody sharing anything, and unless you found a very patient and willing friend, which was the case for me, that showed me some of the basics. So I had two of them. Actually.
Who was that?
So it's funny because like the Sasha connection was there right from the beginning when I think back, and it's funny because I had a beer. I hadn't seen this friend of mine for ages until I went back to England in November. And we had a good little reminisce. His name was Tony Burgess. And he was in a group called Sneaky Alien. And for those prog nerds who were watching, that name might ring a bell because they actually had a track on Sasha's San Francisco Global Underground. And I met these guys through like mutual friends at Cream. Turns out like they were from Manchester.
Okay.
And another place just outside of Liverpool called Runcorn. Warrington Runcorn.
You took the words out of my mouth.
Exactly, yeah, exactly.
I love that album.
Yeah, exactly. So it was Tony who I sort of befriended on the dance floor. Okay. And then, you know, there's always like a quieter guy. And there was another guy called Steve Porter. And he was like the production genius behind it all. So very patiently, like he sat me down one day and a number of days on like the older versions of Logic. And that kind of gave me enough of a taste to then go and try it myself. So I was learning on like the very, very first versions of like Reason back in the day and teaching myself and reading the manuals and stuff. And this is around about 2000, 2001, early versions of like Cubase SX, that kind of thing. Then discovered Ableton. And I'm talking like the first version of Ableton I ever used was like Live 2.
Oh, wow.
Like back in the days when you actually couldn't even load MP3s into it. It was like WAV only. You had to manually warp everything yourself. And it was like a wild opening up of that whole world for me, basically. And as it became more apparent that I needed to start making my own music in order to get to where I wanted to, that passion just started driving and it became more and more of an obsession. I actually had a custom-built PC made just for music that never went on the internet for a number of years.
Oh, wow.
While I was learning, and then shifted to a laptop. Then obviously went Mac when I went to SAE. And then by that point, the other person who I really want to mention and credit is a really good friend of mine who is an unbelievable producer and mixing and mastering engineer in Liverpool called Mike Cave. So Mike was another one of those very patient people. And he used to work as an in-house engineer and then as a freelance producer in a studio in Liverpool called Parr Street Studios. Parr Street previously was owned by Phil Collins.
No way.
And the initial albums, the first couple of albums of Coldplay, were actually recorded in that studio. And parts of like Moby's album, God, which name escapes me now for some reason. But you know, the one with like, you know, all the classics that he wrote with the old samples and everything. Like they did some parts of it there. So
is that the one that goes on?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. And Mike had me go in like on a number of sessions. I'm like 25, 26. And he's got me like working with bands. And that was my first exposure to like working with bands. And, you know, oh, can you go in there and move that microphone like to the left until I tell you to stop? And, you know, can you go to the store and buy some drum skins and this type of thing? I was effectively like his assistant, like I was his runner on a few days. And what was amazing about Mike was that Mike was incredibly calm. I mean, if you ever meet Mike, he's one of the calmest, coolest people on the face of the earth. Like, it kind of like, he's so cool, he kind of like makes you feel a bit insecure. Do you know what I mean? Because he's like, he's got everything. Like,
how can you be that chill, collected?
Yeah, and good looking as well. Like, it's disgusting. Like, he's
the package.
Oh, dude, yeah. Like when we used to go out together to have drinks and stuff, like I realized, oh, I'm the fat friend. I'm the one the other girl's got to take one for the team for in order to, for Mike. Anyway, it's enough about our social life over the years.
I'm just thinking about when I would go to some of the parties with my friends. Some of my friends are queer in New York, and like all the guys at these gay parties are just shredded.
Like, oh, yeah.
And me and my other straight friend, we just look at each other, and he's like, "Damn right, I'm fat."
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, "Me too, Mark."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, Mike was incredibly patient, and he would actually like stop the session, and it's like, you know, he's on like, you know, a major label's dime or something, and he's like, no, I just need 5 minutes to explain how this absolutely massive SSL mixing desk or this Neve mixing desk works for Paul. And that was the moment when the light bulb really went on. And that's when I decided I wanted to go to audio school. And that's when that opening up like really, really happened. And like you say, you know, once I've been to audio school and I developed the language, because I went through that creative frustration of having all of these ideas for tracks in my head and then absolutely having no way of actually expressing that. That's what I went to audio school in order to give myself.
Cool.
And it was really funny actually, because it was really the beginning of everything. But I remember my mentality at the time, 26 years of age, going to audio school thinking like, this is my last chance. Like having a career in the music industry, and it was like it was the beginning of everything. Do you know what I mean? So it's just funny looking back at that mentality and kind of like how limiting it was.
But also, good things come from pressure sometimes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So like when you put yourself in a situation where it's like it's do or die,
yeah,
you do.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a couple of things I'll say to that. I am an expert in when somebody phones me and they ask me to do something, and it's like, it's interesting, and I've got no fucking idea how to do it. I always say yes. And then I put the phone down and go, shit, now I've got to work out how to do it. And there's a portion of that Robert Greene book, Mastery, again, I mentioned before, where he was talking about, actually, that's one of the keys to becoming a master, is to put yourself on what the Chinese used to call death ground. And when like in thousands of years ago, when the Chinese army were like training their battalions, they would station like one battalion or one like, you know, crew of soldiers with their backs to a cliff and then get another battalion to attack them. So it was either go over the cliff or come out fighting, you know? And I often say this to a lot of the artists who I mentor, that whilst it's always sensible to, you know, have contingencies, have you noticed the amount of tightrope walkers that fall off the tightrope when there's a net, and the amount of them that make it to the other side when there's no net? And the difference is because, well, you got to fucking have to, because you're going to break your neck otherwise.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Or die.
Or die, exactly. So it's putting yourself in that position where it's like you have to produce. And that's something that I've been thankfully very good at, that I tend to thrive under pressure, under the right kind of pressure. And me having a deadline for, say, you know, writing a piece of music for like a film trailer, or having a deadline to like finish an album, that kind of thing, it seems to be the catalyst for me bringing out my best, because it's like the old saying, isn't it? Work expands to fill the available time. Give yourself 6 months to do something, it's going to take 6 months and you're still going to be sweating at it at the end. So I've made a bit of a specialism in actually being okay with that being the reality. And even in the most sort of like, oh, Jesus Christ, I've got so much work to do, thinking, well, this is how it is. In fact, this is how you're going to create the best work. So it might feel uncomfortable, but no one ever said creating anything needed to feel good.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good take. And like you said, it brings out the best of you in those, like, when you give yourself the right parameters and you don't really like stray from that. It's just like, you have to get it done. It's going to happen now. Otherwise the work will fill the space. Very interesting. Very interesting. And to talk more about that part of you where you had some prior experience in production, and then you had this light bulb moment, and you're like, okay, I'm going to do this. You put this pressure on yourself, and then reverse engineer yourself into the electronic music industry at a time where, like, it was very pivotal. I think now, I get to talk with other DJs. It is imperative that you both produce and be a DJ. If honestly, it's like, we were talking about this the other day. You have to be, like, first more so a producer, and then a lot of people, not I'll say a lot, but then people are DJing out there. But not everyone wants to produce, or not everyone wants to DJ. Some people just want to produce. But for you kind of have this interesting history or like career where you were already DJing. You were a part of the whole Cream team, like OGs back in the day, which is wild. And we'll talk about that. But then you now are famed producer, especially in the progressive realm as well. So what is that like now that you're putting yourself out there more as a DJ, right? When we met, you're like, oh, I'm relaunching my DJ career. Mm-hmm. What has been that journey like? That's like, this is kind of the bulk I want to get into here, because, right, like achievement, producer, achievement, like cinema, film, achievement. And now it's like you're going to step into the arena of being more so a DJ, or being both. Mm-hmm. What has it been like to be on the production side, but not necessarily be in the DJ realm, and why the switch?
Yeah, I always wanted to do this, and my intention was always to do it. I went to audio school to learn how to make better electronic music. I even started teaching because I knew it would make me a better producer, because if you really want to know something, teach it, okay? And oftentimes you end up teaching the thing that you need to learn. And that was the honest answer. And what happened when I began to teach is that I actually discovered a joy and a beauty and a real love of not only teaching, but also helping other people to fulfill their potential. And when I really got into that, I found myself like fully committed. Again, that's something that came very easily to me. Teaching was something that was very natural. I had a really good aptitude for it because thankfully I've got very good communication skills, and I can sum up a lot of these very complex topics and theories and techniques in ways that people can find digestible. So that, I don't want to say that became the priority, but that became the way that I predominantly put food on the table. So that always took priority. And then when I was asked to work with incredible people like Sasha and Junkie XL and Arthur Baker and everyone else who we've mentioned, that also became, well, I mean, I'm not going to not do it. But again, when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else.
Yeah.
And every time I said yes to engineering a track for somebody, or in some cases ghostwriting them, which I'm not going to say anything else about that, you're saying no to your own priority. And thankfully, around 2018, 2019, I found myself in a position where I could actually start saying yes to myself. So what's happening now is actually been on a delay for a couple of years because of the pandemic. So in 2019, my first expression of me stepping out from the shadows of, working with the people who we've mentioned in this interview so far was an EP on Bedrock, which did really, really well. It was one of the better releases that year for me, and I had another EP that went out on When We Dip's label XYZ, which got a lot of love as well. And everything was kind of like priming upwards for me to take the next step. Then the pandemic happened. And my history as a teacher and a mentor became absolutely priceless in that moment, because I'd literally just launched MYT, my artist development platform, as an online school, if you will, 6 months before the pandemic hit.
Oh, wow. Talk about perfect timing.
Yeah, so from a business sense and also from what my purpose was meant to be in the pandemic, my purpose was to serve. It was to help people and also to build that business through the pandemic, because there was nowhere to play. And I'm going to be completely honest with you, I didn't do one fucking live stream because basically I didn't want to be doing what everybody else was doing. I had a deeper purpose, which was to help people and to not only help guide them through this incredibly difficult time, but help them make the best music that they could. And for me, it's always been about, teaching people the right way to make music for them and understanding the theories and techniques and everything else. But it's always been about something deeper than that. It's always been about me creating or me helping to create better humans. And by creating better humans, hopefully the world gets a little bit better in the process. So my purpose as a coach, as a mentor, as somebody who inspires other people, really took precedence in that time period. So I had to kind of put the Paul Nolan, Bedrock producer, just come off the back of the Sasha album, DJing a lot, because there was nowhere to DJ. Didn't do a live stream through the pandemic DJing because I just thought it was a bit boring, if I'm being completely honest with you. And as I've slowly emerged out of that, then it was still a priority for me to, put myself predominantly first as an artist. I mean, still, coach and mentor people and everything else, but to have a more balanced contribution of both sides, because the epiphany that I had in the last couple of years is the best way I can serve my community and the best way that I can, grow MYT as a movement is to become the best, biggest artist that I can be, which serves as the example for everyone else.
It's kind of like a practicing what you preach type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And the ironic thing, like I said, we go back to it, you end up teaching the thing that you need to learn yourself. So ironically, I do actually sometimes go back through my old videos, because there's now hundreds of hours of me just waffling about stuff on the MYT website. And often I'll watch back some of my old classes from like 2 or 3 years ago, and I'm like, that guy really knows what he's talking about. I'd forgotten that. It's like me from 3 years ago coming back to teach me in 2025. Do you know what I mean?
That's so deep.
It's so weird. It's like
so meta.
It's so weird. It's just like, okay, here comes the multiverse variant of Paul from 3 years ago coming back to teach me something about, music theory or flow states or anything like that, So it's super interesting, especially like it's a weird thing. I'm not going to try and go off on that tangent, but when there's just so much of a record of you as a human being on camera, it does get a little bit strange. But I kind of created MYT to become an archive, a time capsule of all of my condensed knowledge about music, audio engineering, production, music theory, personal development, all of these things, in the hope that, way after I've shuffled off this mortal coil, I'm still hopefully going to serve people.
Totally. And I think like the course in MYT and what you're doing in there does serve people, right? There's a couple of different aspects to it. It's like, be a better music producer, be a better DJ. This is how you do it. This is the right way to do it. but also like doing it from a lens of like be a better human while you're doing this, not just like money grab or like here's the hacks, the hips, and so it's like it's also, from my understanding, it's like it's a vetting process to get in there as well.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
And that's like a true tried and testament way to build community, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to like having to put yourself on hold, right? Because you get into this, you're like, all right, audio engineering school, check. And then you're like, but I got to know this. And then other people are calling me to like work with them and help with them. You're like, I can't say no to that. Was there any time in there where you were like, shit, I've put myself on hold for too long? Like,
oh, yeah. Every fucking day.
Yeah,
every damn day.
You're like, oh, I took on another project. This project's sick, but it's like not moving me in the direction that I want to go.
Yeah.
Or has there been like, you know, because 2020 is hindsight, has there been moments of clarity where you're like, wow, this is actually the right time?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think everything happens with perfect timing. The problem is that you never realize it. So you end up in a situation where, you know, everybody wants to do everything now, right? And everything has its own timeline. And oftentimes things get delayed or deferred, or even things just don't happen. And you don't often understand the entire arc of it, about why that might not have been the right time to do it at that particular moment, or for that dream to come true, or anything else. And that's been very much the case for me, in terms of, I recognise now that through all of the inner work that I've done on myself, which we can talk about, I'm a completely open book as far as that's concerned, that if it had have happened, say, even if I'd blown up even further, say, around the time that I was DJing a lot, around sort of 2003, 2004, 2005, before I went to audio school, I wouldn't have been able to tolerate it because of where I was at in myself. I had a lot of work to do on myself that I didn't recognise at that time. I don't really think you really truly recognise it until you get into your 30s, if I'm being honest with you. So even if like it had happened in like 2019, 2020, it was actually still not the right time. Actually, what I was doing with a lot of my inner work, a lot of the work that I've done with psychedelics, a lot of like personal development work, healing, etc., and also setting up NYT, is that I was actually preparing myself for the pandemic, and preparing myself and my tools and my infrastructure to do what needed to be done in that period, which was to, you know, without sounding too grandiose about it, serve humanity through the medium of helping people to express themselves in an incredibly challenging moment, not just for me and them, but for the entire world. And hopefully it gets to a point where the art that people can now create as a consequence of being exposed to that environment, that incubator, if you will, hopefully goes on and it makes the world a slightly better place. So it was Patrice Baumel who really helped me understand this. Bless him, Patrice helps me understand everything a lot better, because he's just like, I don't know, it's like a metaphorical big brother to me, really. And I remember him saying to me once, he said, Paul, you have to understand that you're having a significant ripple effect. Just because your name's not on the flyer, just because your name's not like on the actual tracks that people are making, you're having a much, much bigger and deeper ripple effect than maybe anyone really understands, chiefly yourself. So I was very, very grateful for that perspective, because it helped me understand that whilst I might have been, you know, in the engine room and like pulling some levers and that kind of thing, I'm still having the desired effect, which is I want to move people. And like going right the way back to the beginning of this conversation, I was saying about all of these disparate strands of my life, like the yoga, the sound therapy, the work with maps, the inner work, the electronic music work, everything. What is the thread that's bringing all those strands together? It's transformation. You know, it's helping to make better humans, make better music, create greater works of art. So in the hope that the world can heal a little bit. and that might sound very sort of, again, grandiose and quite sort of, I don't know, righteous or, I don't know, a bit spiritually elitist. But I genuinely have always felt from the very first second that I was exposed to electronic music as a child that it had this like incredible potential to be able to transform people and transform societies and, in a very positive sense, transform the world. That's why I think certain countries, like my country, the UK, when electronic music really just, ruptured and, almost like a volcanic eruption happened in society in the back end of the 80s and the early 90s. That's why the government attacked it, because all of a sudden people were acting in a different way. There was a lot more joy in people's lives, and people started asking the right questions of power structures. And that's really interesting. That's still of interest to me. So, even though I'm not making like wild declaratory statements about politics on social media, I have my own quiet form of protest, which is creating the next generation of artists that take this whole thing and hopefully take humanity up a level.
Yeah, and I think we can, like, I don't want to mold it for you, but you're saying like grandiose and all of these things. Sure, if people want to take it out of context, sure, it could sound like spiritually elite and all that. But like for me, how I understand it is, right, we all figure out what our purpose is in different ways. Somebody's purpose may be to be a doctor and like to heal people. Somebody's other purpose may be to be a sound therapist and heal people in that way. And your purpose is like, I want to create better humans through music by making better music. And music impacts all of us, like spiritually, fundamentally, molecularly. We can get into all that. But like without music, life is like pretty bland.
I mean, it's
ingrained in us. It's like from day one, the heartbeat evolves. We have music and we have our beat. So to pull it back, it's like you're able to help impact the world and serve the world in the way that you know best, which is a ripple effect, which does impact people's lives in the knowledge that you share, the transformation that you share with your mentorship group, right? Like that is you giving back to the world and making it a better place in how you know. So like, I don't want it to be discounted or to be taken out of context. Like, oh, yes, I'm making the world a better place and we're going to solve world hunger through music. Maybe not, probably not. But like, you're going to impact somebody's lives, and you already have impacted many people's lives for the better through what you're doing. So yes, it is making the world a better place than that. And I think people who come from that standpoint, because there's a lot of, for-profit businesses where it's just like, no, we're here to make money, sign the contract, go fuck yourself. We're really not interested in you as a human being. But that's not the connotation here with you at all. And I want to bring this back to, you're talking about you had to be in a right place for yourself to do inner work. You had to be at the right time to build MYT, right? That's all happening pre-pandemic. And now you have MYT, and that is a thing. So like for people that don't know, and we've spoken about it, it's kind of been a mentorship group. Like what is MYT like explicitly, and like who have you worked with that people might know?
Yeah. So MYT, which stands for Make Your Transition, which is inspired by the Underground Resistance track of the same name, which I think is one of the greatest pieces of electronic music ever made. I really took a lot of the lyrics from that song deeply to heart. It resonated on such a deep level, about finding your strength in the sound, point yourself in the direction of your dreams, and really, really potent. So that's kind of, again, you want to understand the purpose behind MYT, like listen to that track. Simple as that. So I created it initially as something that was meant to be a little more passive, which, like I said before, it was going to be my, archive of here's all the things that wants to fall out of Paul's brain on a particular subject, here, buy this course. When the pandemic happened, it then became very apparent that it was meant to be something else. And one thing I've learned as an entrepreneur is when a business is being forced in a direction, or not forced, but it's going in a direction that you didn't initially intend, don't fight it. So what NYT was doing when it became more of a community-based product through the pandemic was that it was basically telling me what it needed to become. It's a bit like, your child turning around to you and saying, "Oh, I'd like to play football," and you're like, "No, you're going to be a doctor."
They're going to resent you.
Yeah, exactly. And a business, if you want to look at a business like a person, their version of resentment is failure. Is you go out of business. So I just had to follow that, and again, like going back to follow my curiosity. I want to see where this goes, and the strength of the community that we built through the pandemic, the beauty of the connection that we all created 5 years ago. It is now 5.5 years. It'll be in March, and the shared values that we created, and out of that, it was a co-creation. At the end of the day, it wasn't something I created. I created the space. Everybody filled it with what they wanted it to be, and this is another aspect of entrepreneurship that I've really leaned into, is that entrepreneurship is about problem solving. So I constantly, as soon as I started NYT, even before the pandemic hit, I was always asking our community, what do you want? Like, what do you need? What problems can I solve for you? What are your pain points? And honestly, like when the pandemic hit, I asked exactly the same question, and people just said, "Oh, I just want somewhere where I can just connect with people, because everybody's at home, everybody's alone." Some of the feedback we had from some of the community during the pandemic was like, I literally only know what time of day it is or what day it is by when you're online. So if I get a notification and it's like, you've just gone live, it's like, oh, it's 7:00 on a Tuesday. Because, it got really blurry in the pandemic for a long time. So it was providing that little bit of structure and stability. Also a little bit of accountability as well, of helping people get tracks done every month so they could get feedback on them and everything else. And this sort of infrastructure just naturally, organically bloomed out of this situation and out of this company. But I've been teaching for a number of years, like I mentioned before. And really, we've had, a number of really great success stories. And the two that really come up is obviously number one is Masano from Afterlife, and him now being basically one of the biggest DJs on the planet. Considering the fact that I think it was 6-7 years ago, he was coming to my place in Liverpool, and really, really early in his production journey, and was asking obviously all the basic questions and everything else, and me sitting with him one-to-one and hearing that he had some good ideas and helping him to expand on that. Because unlike a lot of other mentors and coaches, my approach is very different in that I'm not teaching a cookie cutter approach of how to do things. I'm trying to teach you to sound like you. I'm trying to help you to get inside of yourself, to bring out of yourself what needs to come out. And I'll be completely honest with you, a lot of people asked me since, oh my god, you taught Masano early on, did he have an aura about him? And I'm like, yeah, the opposite one from what you would expect. Because Sam, I'm still friends with him to this day. I was texting with him last night, and he's a very lovely, calm, fairly quiet, kind of unassuming guy, and he was very much that back in Liverpool when I was teaching him. So when it all blew up for him, I'll be honest with you, me and Sam were, I don't want to say equally surprised, because Sam always had a quiet confidence about him, but certainly, if you'd said to me, who do you think is going to be the most likely to blow up out of all the people you've taught? I'll be honest with you, Sam wasn't somebody who was at the top of my list. So it shows you that there's so many variables that have got to come together. And often it's people who are unlikely candidates that really, really do blow up. But the most important thing is that absolutely every single person who comes to me for mentorship and training and coaching gets exactly the same treatment. Doesn't matter who they are, where they come from, what they look like, what's between the legs, what the background is. They get treated the same. Because I know what works at the end of the day. And that's why I think we've been so popular, because everyone's given the same opportunity. That's really what it's about. It's about opportunity, and it's about merit, and it's about me steering you in the right direction, and actually help, and the community now can help steer people in the right direction, and helping you to, again, like the rising tide lifts all boats, basically. So the other success story is a guy called Four Candles, Chris. This is a beautiful story on a number of levels. He came to MYT, already a good producer, like knows what he's doing, but was missing what you'd call an X factor. That thing that really like takes you over the edge. And he was bringing a lot of tracks in for feedback, and there was this one particular track which was really, really good. And we gave him some feedback on it. And what was really missing was like a commitment. And when I mean a commitment, I mean like an aggression. Like the tracks were really good functionally, sound design wise, beautiful, arranged. Like everything was right, but there was just something missing. And I describe this track as it's really good, but it's too polite. Like you need to really like let something rip here. And he did, and he brought the track back to one of the feedback sessions, and it really, really lit everyone up, and it was fantastic. And he was also getting a little bit of help from somebody who's helped us in the past, which is Nick Muir from Bedrock, which is John Digweed's production partner. So, Nick had heard the track and had some say in it as well, so it was kind of a team effort. And then that track ended up getting played at Room 1 in Fabric by John. And the most hilarious thing is that me and Chris were standing next to each other when he dropped it, which was like a hell of a moment. He obviously just couldn't believe it. I'm standing there like a combination of like, this is a hell of a moment, and also feeling slightly like a proud dad. And subsequently that track called Devious got signed to Bedrock, ended up on the Live in London CD, and he now has a very, very, very long and tight association with John and Bedrock and everything else, and is now well on his way to having an incredible career. So again, like that's what we're here to do. We're here to create an environment where excellence happens, and it's helping guide people towards what their particular version of excellence looks like, both on a professional level but also personally. So again, the tagline of the whole company is you can't become the best artist you can be without becoming the best version of yourself. And that, again, encapsulates a lot of stuff from, my own inner work, my own practices such as yoga and, again, sound therapy, and a lot of the work that I've done in the mental health space within electronic music. Because I'm very much not a believer in the concept of the wounded sort of tortured genius. I'm very much of the thought process of, all these artists who are in the 27 Club, imagine the music Amy Winehouse would be making now if she hadn't have succumbed to her demons and was in a really, really good place in her life. She would probably be making the best music anyone's heard from her. Because I know, and I've said this a number of times, when I'm feeling like shit, that's not happening. Like the studio's not happening. Like nothing's happening. Like I just want to curl up in bed and not do anything. So for me, one begets the other, and I'm on record saying that I think artist development and personal development are the same thing. I'm kind of using music as a Trojan horse to get in there and do the real juicy work.
It's disguised, but I think nothing bad is going to come. What's the worst thing that comes from some extra personal development? You become a better version of yourself, and that's amazing.
I really dislike the term self-improvement. The reason being is that if you understand the concept of the self, big S self, the self cannot be improved. In fact, what you're trying to do is get back to the self. So actually what the process is clearing all the fucking detritus and all the shit that's blocking you from getting back to the self.
All the non-self-serving programming that's been downloaded.
Yeah, exactly. And stuff that the body remembers from probably 3 lives ago.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got to get through all of that muck to be like, this is you. and the goodness that comes from there.
I've done some cleaning.
I want to talk a little bit more about MYT because there's so much value, it seems like, here, right? Not only success stories, great, Masano, Four Candles, amazing stories, but like even for like the average person, or average music producer, like some of the feedback sessions I personally think are super valuable because of your community and who's a part of this, right? Like one of the first feedback sessions you told me about that you were doing, you're like, oh yeah, Patrice Baumel is going to come online and we're going to do like 12 free feedback sessions for 12 tracks. And I was like, what? And like, who else is a part of like these feedback sessions?
Yeah, as I said before, we've had Nick Muir from Bedrock do some stuff. We had Atish do a feedback session with us in the past. And yeah, there's been a number of other people who've been involved, and we're really expanding that concept this year. So we actually have one at the end of January 2025, in about a week or so's time, with an incredible producer called Guy Barone, who is like one of the top names in progressive house. And how that came about was he was actually watching the session you mentioned with Patrice last September and was in the YouTube comments going, oh my God, this is amazing. And then that escalated into, why don't you come and do one? You know, so we're going to be doing them on a regular basis, once a month now. 3-track feedback sessions with artists. And we've had a number of other artists come on and do more like production masterclasses. So the likes of Christoph, Tim Green, Shadow Child, you know, a number of different people have done these types of things. And they've all had their own value. You know, Mike Cave, who I mentioned before, he came on and did some stuff. He actually did some track feedback. So imagine getting feedback from the guy who literally mixed all of Camel Fat's biggest records, but then also in the rest of his day job has mixed literally everyone from Lewis Capaldi to Bob Dylan. Like, you're talking about a guy who is like on the top 3 priority list of producers for, you know, Warner EMI, basically.
Wow.
You know, he's the guy they call. So, you know, the level of expertise that we bring in from various different aspects, and we're going to expand that feedback concept into like full-on label A&R sessions this year. So, you know, we're going to be inviting some record labels on, which will give you an opportunity to actually get feedback from the label itself. And if the music's really, really good, then you've got to end up being signed to those labels. And of course, I'd be remiss not to mention our own label. So again, like you were saying, out of those feedback sessions, again, it's a co-creation, right? And I was kind of putting it off for a long time, to be honest with you, because I'd run a record label in the past with my dear friends Sam and Marcus, Chapter 24 Records, which we don't run anymore. And I was kind of putting off because I know how much work a record label can be. But it escalated, the quality of the productions escalated to such an extent that they forced my hand. And it was a particular artist called Seb T, who is from New York, who for me is like, in terms of like raw talent, he's up there with the likes of Max Cooper and John Hopkins for me. Like I put him in that bracket, like, because he's so incredibly intelligent and talented, and his music's so textured and so dense and so intelligent. And we weren't really getting anywhere, because one of the things that we tried to do is we tried to help artists get signed by labels, and we weren't really getting anywhere. So I got really, really frustrated, and I just blurted it out one day. I went, fuck it, I'm going to sign you myself. And that's how it started. So the label's called Emergent Properties. And the whole idea is that the music that comes from the NYT community is an emergent property of NYT. The community, the people coming through that community are emergent properties of this kind of like organism that we've built. And, you know, that relates to like certain aspects of like AI, you know, emergent properties, you know, unintended or unexpected behaviors or developments or evolutions. And that's very much what that represents as a concept. We've been running the label now for about a year. It'll be a year and a half. And we've had really, really good success with it. And it's a members-only label. So in order to release on the label, you have to be a member of NYT. And the music that we're putting out is just getting stronger and stronger and stronger, because we've allied that feedback and personal development concept to a pathway, an incentive of, hey, if the music's good enough, I'm going to sign it.
Yeah, you have an outlet for them.
Yeah, and it also teaches people, because I've run labels successfully in the past, or helped run labels in the past successfully, I really can show people this is what a good contract should look like. This is how the distribution process works. This is what publishing is. This is what a good record label will do to promote you. And we've had basically every release now of the 10 that we've done. We're about to do our 11th release in the next couple of weeks. We've had almost every single one of them featured on Beatport. We've had multiple number ones in multiple genres. And, you know, we've become one of the most successful hype labels on there. So we're really, really excited about that for the future. We want to spin that off into like events. Indeed, you know, we're looking at doing events in like Amsterdam for ADE this year. And we really want to spin that off into its own thing where we can do, like I say, events and, you know, run it as like a viable business, not just like, oh, cute, you know, a production school does a record label, because, you know, that's been done before. You know, I wanted to bring to bear all of my experience of running record labels and do it as a legitimate thing. So, like I say, it's that feedback aspect, it's the community value, and then that co-creative aspect that's ended up with the output being the record label.
Yeah, I mean, it when you say, oh, a production company's done a record label before, like, that's cute. This, I feel, is way more than that. Sure, if you want to just look at it as, like, very finite. But in terms of, like, an equation, the inputs and the quality of inputs that are going into this, like, mentorship production company, the likes, you're getting feedback from, like, some of the best producers and DJs in the world. You know, like, the stuff that's going to come out of that just by, you know, getting feedback and working with some of the best in the world, including yourself in this, like, it's not a surprise that good quality is coming out of the other end. Or, like, just looking at it, it's like you would expect, okay, good stuff is going to come from this. So I find that very interesting, and I'm really excited to see kind of where that goes as far as the noise it makes in not just on the parties and the events, but like the releases, you know, 11th release, cool, very cool, and like more to come in that realm. So very excited to see that it's not just one genre, that it's got its hands in multiple multidisciplinaries or multiple genres. So
absolutely, yeah.
That's very, very cool. I want to take a break for a minute because I would need to get some water, and then we'll resume.
Cool.
If you want to use the bathroom.
I just need a little bit of water, and I'm good to go, mate. So, yeah.
Cool. This is awesome. The MYT, that's good. There's a ton of clips in there.
Oh, yeah.
There's a ton of clips in there for MYT.
Yeah, happy with it so far, yep.
Are there any topics that you want to talk about in particularly that I haven't hit? Because I'm not going to tell you what the other topics are, but I want to make sure that...
Nothing's really coming to mind, mate. I'm quite happy to just flow.
Okay, cool. Cool. Because I had chapter 24 on there, but we just hit that.
Yeah, great. Nah, thanks for doing this, mate. This is amazing.
No, it's super fun. I don't want to hit like too much on the old like production.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But like it's a very big pivotal part of your career.
Oh yeah, huge, mate.
That'll be nice to in post-production, me taking a piss through the audio.
Oh yeah. Just wondering about like because the sun's starting to come in a little bit here.
Yeah, let me.
Do you want me to pull that blind a little bit? Or?
Yeah, let me pull it.
Yeah, just wondering whether it'll just affect the continuity
Good call.
of.
Let's see.
Yeah, that's look quite cool now.
Good. Still rocking. I got a viral clip idea.
What, you taking a piss?
No,
Oh.
but that audio will be hilarious for my friend Jerome when he's editing this. He'd be like, "Yep, Ryan didn't take the mics off and he's taking a piss."
Oh, I have a funny story about that when I was doing the videos for Beatport Link. Because I've done stuff for like Mixmag in the past, like Beatport. So when somebody signs up for Beatport Link, the streaming service, they get a load of videos off me. And it's not in the videos, of course, but during the shoot, I had like a proper like wireless pack on, and like literally like went for the biggest shit known to man, and everybody heard it because I forgot to fucking put the mute on.
That's amazing.
Fucking great.
All right, so I want to talk about this because this topic is one that's like super popular, and I think you'll be able to speak to it because of your experience as like a certified sound therapist and your work in sound engineering and your work as a producer.
Okay.
So there's a lot of people out there that are talking about how frequencies can heal themselves. You're smiling already, so you know exactly where the fuck I'm going.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah. I'm gonna open this door.
You sure?
And let's walk through. I want to know, like, what's the story with frequencies and being able to heal people?
Is there something to it? Okay, so yeah, there is, but not the way people think.
And before you go in, just like give some context on like why the hell you're able to qualify to talk about this.
Well, because on the one hand, I'm a hardcore audio engineer, and that has taught acoustics to undergraduate degree level. And on the other side of it, I'm a sound therapist that literally can put tuning forks on people's bodies and help them to, trigger the body's own natural healing process. So there is definitely something to it because we wouldn't gather the way we do in front of huge sound systems en masse unless there was something to it, right? But like with a lot of things in the modern world, it's not the way that we think it is, and it's certainly not the way that we're being told on the internet. Okay, so the thing that you're really speaking to, like, let's get to the core of it. Certain frequencies like...
432.
There you go. 3 numbers I wish I'd never heard go together. Now, the reason why I say that is because there's a lot of bullshit around it. So I can give you the context from... Because I have to, like, can you imagine the level of cognitive dissonance that I deal with on a daily basis? Because I'm woo-woo mystical sound therapist on the one hand and hardcore scientist, audio engineer on the other. Somewhere in the middle is a very interesting space where anything is possible, right? So the thing with 432 is I'll come straight out the gate. I think that the frequency 432 and the tuning of it is mostly bullshit.
How come?
Because it's not what people... Like, there's so much stuff around it. So it's not what a lot of the conspiracy theorists say about, it was the Nazis that, had everything retuned. The source of 432 and the source of 440 is essentially, like, very similar. So the reason why all the orchestras tuned to 440 like they did in the 1930s was mostly due to convenience. So what would used to happen is that different orchestras would actually have individualized tuning. So some people would play as low as like 411 and others would tune up as high as like, 465, 470 even. And it meant that different orchestras couldn't play each other's music. So the BBC came in at one point and said, right, here's an arbitrary line at 440. Most things sound good around this point. That means now that, because obviously if you think about it, musical pitch changes as a function of frequency, right? So, the higher the orchestra tune to, it means actually certain things go out of key musically. So it was for the sake of convenience, and the tuning forks that were created around that time were like all in 440. So they said, here's an arbitrary line, thank you very much. Everybody tune to this. Guess what? Everybody can now play each other's music. Effectively, that was like 1930s MIDI. Because prior to MIDI, in the early 80s, everyone had their own proprietary control voltages. So Roland gear would only synchronize with other Roland gear, and it's a bit like, Apple now. It's like they basically try and force you into a closed ecosystem, but it was bad for business because the music tech market wasn't growing, and it took a collaborative effort from all of the manufacturers to come up with this one synchronization language, if you will, called MIDI, that actually then opened everything up. And it was the same thing that happened with orchestras. So 440 just became the arbitrary tuning. So it's got nothing to do with Goebbels or any sort of propaganda or, Hitler collaborating with Wagner and all that. That's all complete nonsense. And again, the interesting part for me is twofold. One, that not only do you have different orchestras playing in different tunings, it's also the fact that you've got different tuning systems. So if you look at Middle East, for example, the Middle East, they have microtonal scales. And they have weird things that are tuned to like 1/4 of a semitone. So one of the big failures of 432, and one of the big failures of the whole thinking around this system, is that, well, the westernized way of us tuning everything is the universal way, and it's not. On a physics point of view, hertz, the actual 432 hertz, which is what we're talking about, is the measure of the cycle of a waveform in 1 second. So when you're talking 432, you're saying 432 cycles per second. The only problem is that a second now isn't what a second was 50 years ago, because even the atomic clocks that run time in the world, they actually have to drop seconds every year in order to maintain everything in sync. So actually what's happened is that a second now, believe it or not, is slightly faster than what it was 50, 60, 70 years ago. So what does that mean? If the second itself is then faster, then the frequency is slightly higher. Mm-hmm. So these whole things are talked about as these are objective, like fundamental things. They're not. Even the things that we consider most fundamental actually change. So if it's not 432 and these things being tuned, because I'll tell you, as a sound therapist, I've witnessed things that are difficult to explain in terms of the level of healing people have gone through. And they've happened and been triggered by some of the most hideous, atonal, horrible noises I've ever heard in my entire life. But it's triggered the body to have a certain response. Mm-hmm. So again, this whole thinking around 432 is faulty because it assumes that everything's going to sound prettier. Now, the reason why people actually gravitate towards 432 is because it feels slightly warmer because of the fact that it's slightly detuned. If you want me to be kind of slightly accurate, although this is only the beginning of a very big rabbit hole that you go down, effectively everything's detuned by 32 cents, which is like, again, it's a 1/32 of a semitone downwards. But the ratios are all off. So there's great videos by people like Adam Neely on YouTube that actually do tune pianos to 432, and basically it just sounds like horrible. It's the worst sounding thing because the ratios of the tunings are all off. They all has to be adjusted. And I've subsequently played a piano that's actually been properly tuned in 432. It's fine. It's fine. It's just nice. It's slightly warmer than a regular piano. That's it. But the biggest thing that I was taught in my sound therapy training in Spain, bless Michelle and Nesta over at harmonicsounds.com in Alicante in Spain. I had an amazing experience with those guys in 2017, learning all of this. Michelle, the first thing that they taught me on the course was, listen, every sound can be healing. Any conceivable sound, including that horrible atonal sound I mentioned before, where the healing comes from is when an intention is placed into it. Because what is music other than intentional noise? Mm-hmm. Organized sound is music. with a certain intention, which is the intention you place into it when you actually create the music in the first place. Disorganized sound is noise. So it basically is a form and a function of that. So essentially what my training has been all about is understanding that anything can be healing. I found incredible levels of healing by going to Metallica concerts. And their darkest records about committing suicide was some of the most healing moments for me in the last few years. Again, it's not all unicorn shit and rainbows in 432. Do you know what I mean? Or I'd quite like to hear that, actually. But there's just all of this faulty thinking around it where it's not the frequency. And yet you're going to see a lot of people talk about, oh, yeah, it's this and it's that. And, you know, oh, you put water in it and, you know, and you make all the
pretty patterns.
You
get the designs.
Yeah. And that's where I kind of get off a little bit. And I understand it because it's like, oh, the fractal basis of reality and quantum physics and all of that stuff. But almost every single sound, every single song, I should say, that I've ever heard that reduced me to tears, that had me bawling and healed me, were in 440. So just check back to that. So if Goebbels had it all retuned to make everybody angry in the Second World War, it's odd that all of that music would actually subsequently heal me, isn't it? See what I mean? It's just so much faulty thinking, propaganda, plain flat nonsense, a lot of spiritual woo-woo as well. And, you know, I think we just have to keep it incredibly basic. And it really is very simple that it's all down to what you find resonant and what you find healing. And as an artist and a producer and a DJ, it's putting that healing intention into the way that you create the music. And actually, it's very powerful when you put that healing intention into playing the music to people as well. I've had a lot of very interesting conversations with DJs around that. And what we do en masse as DJs can be, you know, en masse healing exercises if we get it right, but the intention's got to be there. And what drives the intention, you have to be aware that that's the case in the first place.
So it's super interesting. I resonate with a lot of that. There's a lot of things I don't know, which like I'm happy to learn, or like have to go do my own research now, which is super cool.
Yeah, take the tin foil with you. Just
for sure. In the bowl of water, some sand, and like a metal plate, and I'll make the shapes. What do they call it?
Oh yeah, cymatics.
Cymatics.
Yeah, see, that's another one. Not to cut across you, but that's another one that people talk about. Oh, cymatic frequencies. No, cymatics is the study of the visualization of sound.
Yes, exactly.
There's no such thing as a cymatic frequency because every fucking frequency is cymatic.
Yeah, every sound will make a shape if you put sand or water or whatever.
Yeah.
If you give it a medium to create a shape through.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And you're talking about the videos where they put the sand on the plate.
Yeah.
That's called a Chladni plate. I've actually built one.
Okay.
I've actually built one, super fun. And you can do it really, really easy. You can cut the bottom off like a big paint tub and like stretch like a trash can, like a trash bin, like a black trash bag over it, and make sure it's wound tight. And you can literally like just put a little speaker underneath it and play the sine wave tone, the sweep, and it'll make patterns. Like it's in everything. Do you know what I mean? So there is an element of like, yes, synchronicity to that, and synchronization. It just doesn't come in the form that people think.
I agree, and having very basic knowledge of dealing in modular synthesis, learning here at Siesta del Fano, every waveform has a shape, like sawtooth, triangle, pulse wave, sine wave. We just can't see them, but we can hear them. But you can actually see them with the oscilloscope.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And now we're giving it a medium through like what you're talking about with the sand and the trash bin. Like you can also see the waves and the shapes that they make through that process. But there's not one frequency that is like, this is the one, right? Everyone can kind of it's like everyone's going to react differently to this sound or this frequency or this hertz.
Oh, yeah.
And that makes total sense because there's not a one size fits all, right? Like I think of it in terms of, food. Somebody may be gluten intolerant, somebody's not. Somebody's lactose intolerant, somebody's not, Or like cannabis strains. I used to work in the cannabis space. It's like one strain will hit you differently than this one. Somebody might like Merlot versus tequila, or like all of that stuff. So saying like, no, this is going to cure you, or as a panacea, I always think is very dangerous to kind of just like pass off.
Yeah.
And what I want to get at is another conspiracy theory, we'll call it, is, or propaganda, but specifically in the electronic music space, is because of these frequencies or tones. Have you ever heard or experienced that like some artists can manipulate a crowd with frequencies? I've heard other producers out there talking to me like, oh, they use darker or like evil frequencies or tone like to control and I was like, I don't know if that's a real thing, but no, I'll ask really somebody who's in the space.
No, it's really not. I mean, it's a lot of it is done unconsciously. Mm-hmm. So there's a few different aspects of that, facets to it. So, I mean, I love that. It's made with bad frequencies, bro.
Yeah, like what are they playing the Beatles song backwards and it's the devil speaking, right? That whole thing?
Like Judas Priest, like all of that stuff. No, I mean, a lot of it's nonsense. And a lot of it, I mean, that might actually be the end result. But my experience is that a lot of it is done completely unconsciously and completely unaware. So, again, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? And I'll give you some more realistic ways in which this happens. So, modern sound systems, especially ones that are, how can I say, developed in like the last 20 to 25 years, by and large. I don't want to say certain companies because I don't want to demonize them.
Of course.
But a lot of modern sound systems are made as a result of compressed media, MP3s. So, you know that old Marshall McLuhan quote, which is the medium is the message. So what's happened is, and there's an amazing interview with an incredible dub techno producer called Deep Chord, a guy called Rod Medell on Accelerator magazine, which I would really encourage people to read if they're interested in this type of thing. What Rod talked about really switched me onto this on a more mass level. It was after I did my sound therapy qualification, and I read this article, and it was absolutely incredible that he was talking about, you know, the healing potential of his genre, which is, you know, ambient dub techno, and the softer transients, because he was talking about how modern sound systems reward harsh transients and compressed media. And actually, a lot of these sound systems are built in order to, compensate for the fact that mostly they're having like really not analog quality sound or not really high quality digital sound pushed through them. The result of that is twofold. One, you get modern techno that sounds like modern business techno, which is all super hard transients. And the overall consequence of that is you could actually argue that it's very, very compromising to people's nervous systems.
I would agree with that.
So we've all had that experience, right, of going to a club or a festival and like the music's too loud and the DJ's banging it out too hard, it's too fast, and these transients are just hitting you in the face, and it's jarring.
Yeah, I feel exhausted afterwards.
Yeah, dude, I can't spend 30 seconds on a dance floor like that.
And like there are times where it's like, you know what, I want the higher energy, and like for sure, but doing 6 hours of that for me, to each their own, but for me, it's just like I need to go decompress.
Yeah. Now, I can't exist in that space at least without hearing protection.
Yeah, for sure.
And without regular breaks. So I find it very stressing on my nervous system. And this is the depth of that we have to think about, is as artists, as producers, as promoters of events, even as sound system companies, we have to think about the effect that we're having on people's health. You know, there's a deeper level of thinking that needs to go on, and understanding and awareness of, you're not just playing music at people, you're manipulating their nervous systems. And what, by and large, happens in nervous systems is that there's a certain amount of trauma that's actually stored You know, in the nervous system itself and in the body. You know, if you're interested in that, Bessel van der Kolk wrote a classic called "The Body Keeps the Score." So, like we were saying before, it's like, you know, self-improvement and everything else. You know, it's actually a lot of what we're dealing with is the body's remembering of traumatic events. And if you're firing incredibly harsh transients at people, you can really put them into a sympathetic fight or flight state.
For sure.
Whereas if you're more intelligent about how the sound system represents sound, how it's set up, how it's actually broadcasting what you're playing and what you're playing and the intention you put into it, then it can be something very different. And I've had several experiences where I've both DJ'd and been on the dance floor, and I've walked out of a club or a party at the end of the night feeling better than when I walked on. That's the aim.
It's like doing a workout, right? I've never finished a workout and been like, oh, I'm so upset I did that.
Yeah.
Except for one time when I got rhabdo.
Well, yeah.
That's overdoing
apart from that one time when I was pissing my kidneys out of my ass. So, yeah, you're totally right in that regard. But again, it's down to awareness and being more discerning about the music that we play, the music that we produce, the sound systems that we project onto.